Security dragged the black man from the designer boutique as shoppers watched. He owned the entire mall. The afternoon sun catches the polished marble of Meridian Mall as Marcus Wellington approaches Prestige Boutique. His designer jeans and polo shirt cost more than most people's monthly rent, but he deliberately chose understated elegance for today's mission. Through the boutique's floor-to-ceiling windows, he spots manager Caroline Hayes tracking his movement like a predator. Hayes whispers urgently to her sales associate, eyes never leaving Marcus. "Watch the merchandise closely." Marcus enters with quiet confidence, his practiced eye examining a $3,000 Italian suit. The fabric speaks of quality, craftsmanship, attention to detail, things he appreciates as a connoisseur. "Excuse me," Hayes announces, her voice cutting through the boutique's refined atmosphere. "Do you need directions to somewhere more affordable?" Customers freeze. Phones appear. Marcus maintains his composure as security approaches reluctantly. "I think you're lost. The mall food court is downstairs." "What would you do if you were judged before you even spoke?" "Tell us where you're watching from." Little did Caroline Hayes know, Marcus Wellington had just signed her termination papers. 1 hour earlier, Marcus's midnight black Bentley Continental glides into the executive parking section of Meridian Mall. The reserved space bears a small placard, "Wellington Properties, Owner." He adjusts his rearview mirror, studying the sprawling complex that represents just one piece of his real estate empire. The Sterling Financial Board meeting ended ahead of schedule, giving him the perfect opportunity for an unannounced inspection. Marcus has built his success on hands-on management, believing that the devil lives in details most executives never witness. He deliberately chose casual attire today, designer, but not ostentatiously so. The $800 jeans and $400 polo shirt project understated wealth, the kind that whispers rather than shouts. He wants to experience his properties through the eyes of an ordinary customer, not as the landlord who signs the lease checks. Security footage from his office has been troubling. Customer complaints about discriminatory treatment at several stores, all dismissed by district managers as misunderstandings. Today, he'll see the truth firsthand. Marcus enters through the main entrance, immediately noting the atmosphere. Hayes stands behind the boutique's counter, her body language shifting the moment she spots him. He watches her greet a white couple with warm smiles and offers of champagne, personally escorting them to the VIP dressing area. Minutes later, a young black professional approaches inquiring about a suit. Hayes barely glances up from her computer, directing him to a cramped corner without making eye contact. "Everything's marked with prices," she says dismissively. Marcus's jaw tightens. He pulls out his phone, discreetly activating the recording function. This isn't poor customer service. It's systematic discrimination playing out in real time. An elderly black gentleman enters, carrying what appears to be a perfectly legitimate return. Hayes examines the receipt with exaggerated suspicion, holding it up to the light as if detecting counterfeits. The man's shoulders slump with each passing moment of unnecessary scrutiny. "Sir, I'll need to call corporate to verify this purchase," Hayes announces loudly enough for other customers to hear. Marcus can't remain silent. He steps forward, his voice calm but carrying authority. "Excuse me, is there a problem with this gentleman's transaction?" Hayes looks up, her pale eyes narrowing as they focus on Marcus. Something predatory flickers across her features, the look of someone who has identified their next target. "And you are?" she asks, her tone dripping with condescension. "A concerned customer," Marcus replies evenly. "I'm interested in examining your merchandise." Hayes laughs, a sharp sound that cuts through the boutique's refined atmosphere. "Of course you are." Marcus picked up a $5,000 jacket, and Hayes decided he'd gone too far. Marcus lifts the hand-tailored Armani blazer from its display, his fingers recognizing the quality of the fabric instantly. The construction is impeccable. Every stitch placed with precision, every detail crafted to perfection. He examines the interior lining with the practiced eye of someone who understands luxury. Hayes approaches with a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. That particular piece is $4,800. Do you have our store credit card? I don't need a credit card, Marcus replies calmly, continuing his inspection. I'll pay cash if I decide to purchase it. The smile vanishes. Hayes's demeanor shifts like a storm cloud passing over the sun. Cash? Sir, we'll need to verify any large cash transactions. Store policy. Marcus knows this is a lie. He's familiar with retail policies, intimately familiar given that he owns the building. But he doesn't correct her. Not yet. I understand retail procedures, he says evenly. I've worked in the industry. Hayes's laugh is louder this time, drawing attention from other customers. The industry? Right. Sir, are you sure you're familiar with our price range? This isn't exactly accessible fashion. The condescension drips from every word. Marcus maintains his composure, but his jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. He's heard this tone before. The carefully modulated voice of someone who believes their prejudices are justified. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at the department store downstairs, Hayes continues, her voice carrying across the boutique. They have more suitable options. She positions herself between Marcus and the most expensive merchandise, as if he might contaminate it with his presence. Other customers begin to notice the tension, their shopping interrupted by the uncomfortable spectacle. Marcus reaches into his wallet and produces a business card. Sterling Consulting, he says, placing it on the counter with deliberate precision. Hayes picks up the card, examines it with theatrical skepticism, then sets it down with a dismissive flick. Anyone can print cards these days. We require actual proof of income for people like you. People like me? Marcus's voice remains steady, but there's steel beneath the silk. You know exactly what I mean, Hayes replies, then calls over her shoulder to Rodriguez, the security guard. We might have a situation developing here. Rodriguez approaches reluctantly, clearly uncomfortable with the escalating tension. Several customers have stopped their browsing entirely, some discreetly recording with their phones. I'd like to speak with your regional manager, Marcus requests, his tone still professional despite the circus forming around him. I have full authority to handle difficult customers, Hayes replies, emphasizing the word difficult with obvious satisfaction. And I'm telling you that a credit union might be more accommodating to your needs. That's when Hayes made the fatal mistake that would destroy her career. Hayes stands abruptly, her chair scraping against the boutique's polished floor. The harsh sound cuts through the refined atmosphere like a warning shot. Her voice carries deliberately across the space, loud enough for every customer to hear. Sir, I'm going to need you to empty your pockets on the counter. Marcus raises an eyebrow. I'm sorry? We have strict policies about suspicious customers, Hayes announces, her chest puffing with self-importance. Given your behavior, I need to verify you haven't taken anything that doesn't belong to you. The boutique falls silent. Every customer, every employee, every person within earshot stops what they're doing. The accusation hangs in the air like poison gas. Rodriguez shifts uncomfortably near the entrance. Ma'am, I don't think this is security protocol, Hayes cuts him off sharply. Sir, your pockets, now. Marcus surveys the boutique, noting the shocked faces, the phones now openly recording, the elderly white woman shaking her head in disgust. He calculates his options in the space of a heartbeat, then slowly reaches into his pockets. Hayes pulls on latex gloves with theatrical precision, making a show of each item she examines. The custom leather wallet, the Platinum American Express black card, the keys to a $200,000 Bentley. Each item seems to confuse her more than the last. These are probably fake, she mutters, holding his credit cards up to the light. Easy to get knockoffs online these days. Caroline, this is completely inappropriate. Jenny, the young sales associate, finally speaks up, her voice trembling with indignation. Mind your own business or find another job, Hayes snaps back, never taking her eyes off Marcus. She picks up her desk phone, dialing a number while maintaining aggressive eye contact. Her voice carries across the boutique. Yes, I need to report suspicious activity. We have a customer here making claims about his financial status, but... She pauses dramatically. Well, let's just say the documentation doesn't match the individual. Marcus stands in the center of the boutique like he's on trial. Other customers form a loose circle around him, some sympathetic, others simply curious about the unfolding spectacle. He can hear whispered conversations, feel the weight of their stares, sense the toxic atmosphere Hayes has created. Sir, I need you to wait right here while I verify your identity, Hayes announces, gesturing to a chair positioned directly in the center of the boutique's main floor. Don't move from that spot. The humiliation is complete. Marcus Wellington, owner of a multi-million-dollar real estate empire, sits in a chair like a child in timeout while Hayes makes increasingly loud phone calls about fraudulent customers and security concerns. A young black woman near the accessories section has been recording everything, her face tight with anger. She shakes her head and mutters, "This is absolutely insane." Hayes returns to her position of power behind the counter, shuffling papers with exaggerated importance. "We have policies," she announces to the room. "We can't just let anyone walk in here claiming to be something they're not." She approaches Marcus's chair, standing over him like a principal addressing a troublesome student. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises immediately. We don't tolerate fraud attempts in this establishment." Marcus stands slowly, his movements deliberate and controlled. Every eye in the boutique follows his graceful rise to his full height. "I'll remember this moment," he says quietly, his voice carrying a weight that makes Hayes step back slightly. "Good luck finding another store willing to deal with your kind," Hayes smirks, confident in her victory. Marcus walked toward the exit, pulling out his phone to make a call that would change everything. Marcus steps onto the marble corridor outside Prestige Boutique, the afternoon light streaming through the mall's skylights casting long shadows across the polished floor. He stands perfectly still for a moment, processing the humiliation with the cold calculation of a man who has built empires from nothing. The memory of his grandmother's stories floods back. Similar treatment in 1960s Alabama, the same dismissive looks, the same toxic assumptions. But his grandmother never had the power to fight back. Marcus does. He pulls out his phone, scrolling to his assistant's number. "Cancel everything for the rest of the day," he says calmly, his voice betraying none of the fire burning inside. "We have a situation at Meridian Mall that requires immediate attention." A group of teenagers walks past, laughing about something on their phones, oblivious to the fact that they've just witnessed the opening act of a corporate revolution. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that justice is about to be served with surgical precision. Marcus dials his head of mall security. "I need complete footage from Prestige Boutique for the past 2 hours. Everything. Every angle. Send it to my office immediately." His phone buzzes with a text from his corporate attorney. "Discrimination case prep materials ready. Awaiting your instructions." "Execute," Marcus types back. "Full legal response authorized." He calls his publicist next. "Rachel, I need you to prepare for a comprehensive media campaign. Retail discrimination case, high profile, I'll be the face of it." While he speaks, Marcus notices the young black woman from inside the boutique approaching. She's still recording with her phone, her expression a mixture of outrage and admiration. "Excuse me," she says quietly. "I got everything on video. That was completely unacceptable treatment." Marcus nods, his expression softening slightly. "Would you be willing to share that footage with my legal team?" "Absolutely. That racist bitch needs to be exposed." She pauses, studying his face. "You're not just any customer, are you?" Marcus's smile is sharp as a blade. "No, I'm not." Inside the boutique, Hayes holds court at her desk, regaling her colleagues with her version of events. "You should have seen his face when I made him sit in that chair," she laughs. "Some people need to learn their place in this world." Jenny looks disgusted. "Caroline, that was horrible. He seemed like a decent man." Decent men don't try to defraud high-end retailers, Hayes replies smugly. I probably saved the company thousands in fake transactions. Rodriguez shakes his head. Something felt wrong about that whole situation. Your problem, Martinez, is you're too soft for this business, Hayes sneers. This job requires someone who understands how to protect the company's interests. Meanwhile, Marcus's phone rings. His assistant's voice is crisp and efficient. The Wellington Properties Board has approved the emergency lease review. Prestige Boutique is now in violation of their anti-discrimination clause. You have grounds for immediate termination. Marcus looks back at the boutique through the glass storefront, watching Hayes celebrate her victory with her colleagues. None of them have any idea what's coming. Perfect, he says quietly. Schedule an emergency tenant meeting for tomorrow morning. All employees required to attend. He ends the call and takes one last look at the store. Tomorrow the tables will turn completely. A final call to his head of corporate security. I want a complete background check on Caroline Hayes. Employment history, customer complaints, everything. I want to know every discriminatory incident she's been involved in. As Marcus's team assembled, Hayes was about to discover who she'd really thrown out. Marcus's assistant arrives within 45 minutes, accompanied by a team of corporate lawyers and crisis management specialists. They establish a temporary command center in the Wellington Properties Executive Conference Room, just 2 floors above the boutique where the incident occurred. The lease review is complete, his assistant reports, sliding documents across the mahogany conference table. Prestige Boutique has violated multiple anti-discrimination clauses. You have legal grounds for immediate termination. Marcus signs the preliminary paperwork with the same steady hand that built his empire. Excellent. I want a comprehensive audit of their customer complaints, employee practices, and management decisions for the past 3 years. Meanwhile, Hayes basks in her perceived triumph. She's drafted a detailed incident report, painting herself as the vigilant manager who protected valuable merchandise from a potential theft attempt. The document sits on her desk, ready for submission to corporate headquarters. You handled that situation perfectly, says Tom, the assistant manager from the jewelry section. These people think they can just walk into luxury retail and demand service. Hayes raises her coffee cup in a mock toast. To maintaining standards. Neither realizes that Jenny, the sales associate, has been recording their conversation on her phone, her face tight with disgust at their casual racism. At Wellington Properties, Marcus's legal team works with military precision. Corporate investigators are already reviewing security footage from multiple angles, documenting every moment of discriminatory behavior. What they discover confirms Marcus's worst fears about his tenant. This is systematic, Margaret Chen, his lead attorney, reports. 23 formal complaints about discriminatory treatment filed in the past 18 months alone, all buried by district management. And Hayes specifically? Marcus asks. 5 documented incidents of racial profiling. Each time she received a warning and sensitivity training. Each time she ignored it completely. Marcus's phone buzzes with notifications. The video from the young woman who witnessed the incident has been shared 37 times on social media already, with comments ranging from outraged to supportive. The hashtag #PrestigeBoutiqueShame is beginning to trend locally. Get our social media team involved, Marcus instructs his publicist. I want this story controlled and amplified strategically. Back at the boutique, Hayes is already planning her next career move. She's convinced that her handling of the difficult customer will earn her the district manager position she's been coveting. She drafts an email to regional headquarters, highlighting her proactive risk management and customer security protocols. I'm thinking of applying for the district manager opening, she tells Tom. After today's demonstration of leadership, I think I've proven my capabilities. She hits send on the email, completely unaware that her new landlord is reading every word in real time through the corporate monitoring system. Hayes had no idea that her new boss was already planning her termination. The next morning, Marcus arrives at Prestige Boutique dressed as a corporate compliance inspector from Wellington Properties. He wears a different suit, his hair styled differently, and carries an official-looking clipboard. To Hayes, he's just another face from the corporate hierarchy. She doesn't recognize the man she humiliated 24 hours earlier. Ms. Hayes. Marcus approaches her desk, his voice crisp and professional. I'm James Morrison from Wellington Properties Tenant Compliance Department. I'm here to conduct a routine operational review. Hayes straightens immediately, her demeanor shifting to obsequious professionalism. Of course, Mr. Morrison. Whatever you need. This is perfect timing, actually. Oh? Marcus takes a seat where he can observe the entire boutique operation. Yesterday, I handled a particularly challenging security situation, Hayes explains, her chest puffing with pride. I think it demonstrates our commitment to loss prevention and customer safety protocols. Marcus's pen hovers over his clipboard. Tell me about it. A suspicious individual came in claiming interest in our high-end merchandise, Hayes continues, completely oblivious to the irony. Obviously fraudulent. I followed proper security protocols, identified the threat, and removed the problem before any damage occurred. Removed how? Marcus's voice remains neutral, but his grip tightens on his pen. Hayes leans in conspiratorially. Well, you know how it is. Some people think they can just walk into luxury retail and demand the same treatment as our legitimate customers. I can spot potential shoplifters from across the store. At that moment, an elderly black couple enters the boutique. Marcus watches as Hayes's entire demeanor transforms. Her welcoming smile disappears, replaced by barely concealed suspicion and irritation. Next, she calls out coldly. The couple approaches hesitantly. We're interested in looking at some formal wear for our anniversary, the woman says politely. Hayes barely glances at them. Our formal wear starts at $3,000. You'll need to provide proof of income and a credit check before trying anything on. Marcus knows these requirements are completely fabricated. He's familiar with every policy in his mall, but he says nothing, documenting every discriminatory word. We've been shopping here for 15 years, the man protests gently. That doesn't guarantee anything, Hayes replies dismissively. Maybe try the department store in the lower level. They're more flexible with their standards. Marcus documents every word, every gesture, every moment of blatant discrimination. Hayes continues her performance, completely unaware that she's digging her own professional grave with each prejudiced comment. You see what I mean? Hayes whispers to Marcus. This is exactly the kind of situation I handled yesterday. Some people just don't understand appropriate boundaries. Marcus smiled as Hayes unknowingly signed her own termination papers. Marcus schedules a mandatory tenant compliance meeting for the following morning, informing Hayes it's a routine corporate communications session. He's invited local news outlets, civil rights leaders, and Wellington Properties executives, though Hayes believes it's simply a staff meeting about store policies. This is excellent timing, Hayes tells Tom as they prepare for the meeting. Corporate will finally see how I handle challenging situations. This could be my ticket to that district manager position. She's prepared a PowerPoint presentation defending her actions, complete with fabricated security protocols and risk management strategies. The presentation is titled Proactive Customer Assessment, a case study in loss prevention excellence. Meanwhile, Marcus's trap tightens with each passing hour. That morning, he watches Hayes discriminate against a young Latino entrepreneur seeking information about a suit for his job interview. Despite perfect credit and genuine interest, Hayes dismisses him with barely a glance. We don't really cater to that demographic, Hayes lies smoothly. You might find better options at the discount retailers across town. Marcus's jaw clenches as he documents the blatant falsehood. He knows the store's mandate includes serving all qualified customers regardless of background. During the lunch break, Hayes becomes increasingly bold, making racist jokes with her colleagues while customers browse nearby. Her comments grow more explicit as the day progresses, emboldened by what she perceives as corporate support. The problem with these people, she says loud enough for shoppers to hear, is they think they deserve the same treatment as everyone else. Someone has to maintain professional standards. Jenny approaches Marcus privately, recognition finally dawning in her eyes. "You're not really a compliance inspector, are you?" Marcus's smile is cold as winter. "No, I'm not." "Good," Jenny says quietly, "because what she's doing is wrong. What she did yesterday was evil." By closing time, Marcus has compiled a devastating portfolio of discriminatory behavior. Hayes's actions aren't just ethically reprehensible. They're illegally discriminatory and financially damaging to the entire mall. His phone buzzes with updates from his legal team. The State Retail Commission has announced a formal investigation. The Better Business Bureau has received 17 complaints in 24 hours. Local civil rights organizations have scheduled protests for the weekend. Hayes remains blissfully unaware, spending her evening perfecting her presentation. She's convinced tomorrow will be her triumph, the moment corporate recognizes her value to the organization. She practices her opening line in the bathroom mirror. Yesterday's incident perfectly demonstrates why strong leadership is essential in today's retail environment. Marcus reviews his own presentation, a systematic deconstruction of Hayes's career, complete with recorded evidence, witness testimonies, and legal documentation that will destroy her professionally. Tomorrow morning, Hayes would discover that her victim was actually her judge, jury, and executioner. The prestige boutique conference room fills with an unusual crowd. Hayes notices the cameras, the unfamiliar faces, the tension crackling through the air, but assumes it's standard corporate theater. She sits in the front row, her presentation remote in hand, confidence radiating from every pore. Marcus enters wearing a charcoal Tom Ford suit, his presence commanding immediate attention. He carries himself with the unmistakable authority of someone who owns everything in sight. Hayes feels a nagging sense of familiarity but can't place where she's seen him before. "Good morning," Marcus begins, his voice carrying clearly through the packed room. "I'm Marcus Wellington, CEO of Wellington Properties, and as of yesterday, I'm conducting a comprehensive review of this establishment's practices." Hayes's confident smile begins to falter. Something about his voice, his posture, the way he holds himself triggers a memory she can't quite grasp. "2 days ago," Marcus continues, his tone calm and measured, "I experienced discrimination and humiliation in this very store. I was profiled, accused of theft, and forced to endure public degradation based solely on the color of my skin." The room falls silent. Hayes's face drains of color as recognition crashes over her like a tsunami. Her hands grip the arms of her chair so tightly her knuckles turn white. "Let me share with you the exact treatment I received," Marcus says, clicking a remote. The wall screen comes alive with security footage from 2 days earlier. Hayes watches herself in high definition, her every word, every gesture, every moment of discrimination preserved in digital clarity. "We don't serve your kind here," her voice echoes through the room. "People like you don't have legitimate business needs," the recording continues. "Maybe try the food court downstairs, somewhere more appropriate for your type." Hayes tries to stand, her legs shaking. I didn't know. I was just following security protocol." "Protocol?" Marcus's eyebrow arches. Is it protocol to assume someone's creditworthiness based on their race? Is it protocol to force customers to empty their pockets based on racial profiling? He advances methodically through his presentation, each slide more damaging than the last. Customer complaints spanning 2 years, all featuring Hayes's discriminatory behavior. Emails where she bragged about keeping undesirable elements out of the store. Security footage showing her differential treatment of white versus minority customers. "Ms. Hayes, you cost this mall significant revenue through your discriminatory practices," Marcus reveals, clicking to a financial summary. "Your actions resulted in $1.8 million in lost business and potential legal liability in the millions." Hayes's mouth opens and closes soundlessly. Tom, her colleague, slinks lower in his chair as Marcus plays recordings of their racist conversations. Jenny nods approvingly as Marcus reveals how employee complaints about discriminatory behavior were systematically ignored. "Your behavior represents everything wrong with institutional racism in retail," Marcus continues, his voice gaining strength. You're not an anomaly. You're a symptom of a system that allows discrimination to flourish unchecked. He turns to address the room directly. Ms. Hayes assumed she could humiliate me because she judged me by my appearance. She never imagined that the man she threw out of the store actually owned the building. The room erupts in gasps and whispers. Hayes finally finds her voice, desperation making it crack. You can't do this. I have rights. I was protecting the store. Your job, Marcus says coldly, was to serve customers with dignity and respect. Instead, you chose to humiliate, discriminate, and demean. You made that choice repeatedly, despite warnings, despite training, despite clear policies prohibiting such behavior. Security guards, different ones, Marcus notes with satisfaction, step forward. Hayes looks around the room desperately, seeking support that doesn't exist. Her colleagues avoid eye contact. The community leaders in attendance watch with grim satisfaction. As of this moment, Marcus announces, Caroline Hayes is terminated for cause. Her actions violated federal civil rights laws, state anti-discrimination statutes, and basic human decency. Hayes collapses back into her chair as the reality hits her. 20 years of retail management destroyed in an instant by her own prejudice and hatred. This establishment will undergo comprehensive reform, Marcus continues. New policies, new training, new leadership. We will become a model for how retail should serve all customers with equal dignity and respect. The room erupts in applause. Hayes sits frozen as the security guards approach, her career, her reputation, her entire future crumbling in real time. I'm sorry, she whispers, the words barely audible. I'm so sorry. Marcus meets her eyes directly. Sorry doesn't undo the damage you've caused to countless customers, Ms. Hayes. Sorry doesn't restore the dignity you stole from people who deserved better. The security guards escort Hayes from the room as cameras capture every moment. The woman who threw Marcus out of his own store is now being thrown out herself, her decades-long career ending in disgrace and national humiliation. But Marcus's victory was just the beginning of Hayes's nightmare. The video of Hayes's termination explodes across social media platforms within hours. The footage reaches 12 million views by evening, transforming #prestige boutique shame into a national conversation about retail discrimination. Marcus's story becomes a powerful symbol of both systemic racism and the possibility of justice. Wellington Properties' stock price initially dips 2% as investors process the discrimination scandal, but rebounds sharply as analysts recognize Marcus's decisive leadership. Wall Street experts praise his comprehensive response to institutional bias, with several major firms upgrading their recommendations. This is exactly the kind of corporate accountability we need, declares financial analyst Robert Martinez on Bloomberg. Marcus Wellington didn't just fire a racist employee, he demonstrated that discrimination destroys shareholder value. The legal machinery moves with devastating efficiency. Federal prosecutors file civil rights violation charges against Hayes within 36 hours. The state attorney general's office follows with additional discrimination charges, arguing that her actions created a hostile public accommodation environment based on race. Hayes's court-appointed attorney, Michael Stevens, attempts damage control at a hastily arranged press conference. My client made poor judgment calls under pressure, but criminalizing workplace mistakes sets a dangerous precedent for managers everywhere. The argument falls flat. Legal experts across the political spectrum agree that Hayes's behavior crossed well beyond workplace mistakes into criminal territory. This wasn't a single incident, explains civil rights attorney Jennifer Davis on CNN. This was a documented pattern of deliberate, systematic discrimination that violated multiple federal laws. The evidence is overwhelming. Hayes's personal life implodes with equal speed. Her husband, David, files for divorce after 25 years of marriage, citing irreconcilable differences stemming from values I cannot support. Their teenage twins face brutal harassment at school, with classmates sharing videos of their mother's racist comments. "I can't be married to someone who represents everything I was raised to oppose," David tells reporters outside the courthouse. "This isn't the woman I thought I married." The financial consequences prove equally devastating. Hayes's retail management license is permanently revoked by state regulators. Professional organizations expel her from membership. Her retirement savings evaporate as legal fees mount, and the family home enters foreclosure. Wellington Properties implements sweeping reforms that become an industry benchmark. Every employee undergoes mandatory 60-hour bias training. Anonymous reporting systems connect directly to corporate executives. Customer service interactions are randomly audited for discriminatory language or behavior. "We're not just changing policies," Marcus explains to a packed auditorium at the National Retail Federation conference. "We're changing culture. Discrimination isn't just morally wrong, it's economically destructive and fundamentally opposed to everything retail should represent." The ripple effects extend throughout the retail sector. Macy's announces enhanced diversity training. Target establishes new customer advocacy positions. Nordstrom implements AI monitoring systems to detect potential discrimination in real time. Federal regulators seize the momentum to strengthen enforcement. The Department of Justice issues new guidelines requiring retailers to report discrimination incidents quarterly. The Federal Trade Commission announces that discriminatory practices will factor into corporate compliance reviews. Meanwhile, Hayes's legal troubles multiply exponentially. A class action lawsuit emerges, representing 47 customers who experienced similar treatment. Individual lawsuits follow, each seeking millions in damages. The discovery process reveals internal communications that make her situation significantly worse. "These people think they can just walk into luxury retail and demand service," Hayes wrote in one particularly damaging email. "Someone has to maintain civilized standards." Social media becomes a 24-hour nightmare for Hayes and her family. The Caroline Hayes Challenge goes viral, with people sharing their own retail discrimination stories. Her home address leaks online, forcing the family to relocate after death threats arrive daily. Marcus, meanwhile, becomes an unlikely symbol of resistance and transformation. Speaking requests flood in from universities, corporations, and civil rights organizations. Publishers offer 8-figure advances for his autobiography. HBO approaches about documentary rights. "I didn't choose to become a symbol," he tells Anderson Cooper in a primetime interview. "I chose to shop at my own store. Caroline Hayes chose to make me a symbol through her discriminatory actions." The investigation expands beyond Prestige Boutique. Federal auditors discover that Hayes's discriminatory practices were known to Prestige Boutique's corporate management but deliberately ignored. 3 regional executives are suspended pending investigation. The company's CEO faces congressional testimony. Hayes's criminal trial is scheduled for 8 months later, but plea negotiations begin immediately. Her attorney recommends accepting responsibility to avoid a lengthy prison sentence. The audio recordings alone would convict her, Stevens privately tells colleagues. The witness testimony makes it a certainty. "We need to minimize damage, not fight the inevitable." The broader retail industry transformation accelerates. The National Retail Federation revises its code of ethics, explicitly addressing racial discrimination. Business schools add Marcus's case to their curricula as a study in crisis management and ethical leadership. Hayes, meanwhile, becomes unemployable. Job applications are rejected immediately when her name appears. She's forced to declare bankruptcy as legal costs exceed $400,000. Her children change their last names to avoid association with her notoriety. "She's become a cautionary tale," observes workplace discrimination expert Dr. Angela Rodriguez. Corporate America now understands that racist behavior doesn't just harm individuals, it destroys careers, companies, and communities. The transformation at the former Prestige Boutique becomes a model for the industry. Customer satisfaction scores improve dramatically under new management. Employee retention increases as the toxic culture is eliminated. Profits actually rise as the store attracts customers who value dignity and respect. Jenny, the young sales associate who documented Hayes's behavior, receives a promotion to assistant manager. Rodriguez, the security guard who recognized the injustice, becomes head of customer relations. The store's diversity metrics improve across every measurable category. Marcus Wellington showed us that doing the right thing isn't just morally correct, Jenny reflects during a staff meeting. It's good business practice. Congressional hearings generate bipartisan support for new legislation. The Retail Equality Act passes with overwhelming majorities, creating federal protections against customer discrimination and establishing whistleblower protections for employees who report racist behavior. Hayes watches these developments from her small apartment, her fall from middle-class comfort to near poverty complete. She's lost her job, her family, her reputation, and her future. The woman who once wielded power over customers now struggles to find minimum wage employment. The retail industry's response extends globally. International chains adopt similar policies. European retailers strengthen their anti-discrimination training. The case becomes a worldwide symbol of the costs of prejudice and the power of accountability. Marcus's Wellington Foundation, established with proceeds from his book deal and speaking engagements, provides legal support for discrimination victims who lack resources to fight back. The foundation has funded over 150 cases, creating a network of protection for vulnerable consumers. This case changed everything, observes retail analyst Sarah Kim. It showed that discrimination isn't just morally wrong, it's a business-killing liability that smart companies can't afford to ignore. As Hayes faced her final judgment, the entire retail industry transformed forever. The federal courthouse downtown overflows with spectators for Caroline Hayes' sentencing hearing. Media trucks line the street, their satellite dishes reaching toward an overcast sky that seems to mirror the defendant's fate. Security guards check credentials as civil rights leaders, retail industry executives, and community members file into the packed gallery. Hayes sits at the defendant's table, her expensive business attire replaced by a discount store suit that hangs awkwardly on her diminished frame. The confident manager who once commanded a luxury boutique now appears broken, her shoulders hunched, her eyes darting nervously around the courtroom. Judge Maria Santos, a veteran jurist known for her firm approach to civil rights cases, reviews the extensive case file. The evidence is overwhelming. Recorded conversations, video footage, witness testimonies, and a documented pattern of discriminatory behavior spanning 3 years. Ms. Hayes, Judge Santos begins, her voice carrying the weight of decades on the bench. You have pleaded guilty to multiple counts of civil rights violations under federal law. Before I impose sentence, I want to hear from the victims of your actions. Marcus takes the witness stand first, his composure absolute despite the gravity of the moment. He wears a navy suit that commands respect, his voice clear and unwavering as he addresses the court. Your Honor, what happened to me was humiliating and wrong, but I had resources to fight back. I think about the elderly customers, the young professionals, the working families who experienced similar treatment but couldn't defend themselves. Ms. Hayes didn't just discriminate against individuals. She perpetuated a system that destroys dreams and reinforces inequality. Hayes' attorney, Michael Stevens, shifts uncomfortably as Marcus's testimony continues. His client's chances of receiving leniency diminish with each powerful word. The elderly black couple from the boutique testifies next. Mr. Johnson's voice trembles with emotion as he describes decades of loyalty to retail establishments, only to be treated like criminals in their golden years. We shopped at that store for our anniversary every year, Mrs. Johnson adds, tears streaming down her face. To be told we didn't belong after 20 years of patronage, it broke something inside us that may never heal. Jenny, the former sales associate, provides devastating testimony about the toxic workplace culture Hayes created. She made racist comments daily. She trained newer employees to profile customers based on race. When I complained to management, I was told to focus on my own responsibilities. Rodriguez, the security guard, describes his reluctance to follow Hayes' discriminatory orders. I knew what she was asking me to do was wrong, but I needed the job. I'm ashamed I didn't speak up sooner. Stevens attempts a desperate defense, arguing that his client was a product of institutional racism rather than its architect. Your Honor, Ms. Hayes worked within a system that tacitly encouraged this behavior. She's become a scapegoat for industry-wide problems. Judge Santos interrupts sharply. Mr. Stevens, your client had multiple opportunities to change her behavior. She received training, warnings, and direct orders to stop discriminating. She chose to continue her illegal conduct. The prosecution presents its case methodically. Federal prosecutor Angela Martinez details the financial harm Hayes caused, the civil rights violations, and the broader impact on community trust in retail institutions. This defendant didn't just violate federal law, Martinez argues. She violated the basic principle that all Americans deserve equal treatment in public accommodations. Her actions were deliberate, persistent, and caused measurable harm to dozens of victims. Hayes finally speaks, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. I know that's not enough, but I'm truly sorry for the pain I've caused. I was wrong. I let prejudice cloud my judgment, and I hurt people who deserved so much better. Judge Santos studies her for a long moment. Ms. Hayes, your apology rings hollow because it comes only after you've faced consequences. The evidence shows you had numerous opportunities to change your behavior, yet you chose to continue discriminating against customers based on race. She pauses, allowing the weight of her words to settle over the courtroom. You didn't just violate federal law, you violated the trust placed in you by your community, your customers, and your employer. You perpetuated a system of discrimination that has caused immeasurable harm. The sentence is swift and decisive. 2 years in federal prison, $300,000 in restitution to victims, 500 hours of community service at civil rights organizations, and a lifetime ban from retail management positions. Hayes collapses into her chair as the gavel falls. Her remaining family members in the gallery begin crying. Marcus watches from the front row, his expression reflecting not triumph, but solemn satisfaction that justice has been served. But Hayes' downfall sparked a retail revolution that changed everything. The Hayes case becomes a watershed moment for American retail, triggering the most comprehensive industry reforms since the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Federal regulators, emboldened by public outrage and Marcus's example, implement sweeping changes that transform how retail establishments operate nationwide. The Federal Trade Commission mandates annual discrimination audits for all retail chains with revenues exceeding $50 million. These audits examine customer service patterns, employee training records, and complaint resolution procedures using sophisticated AI algorithms that detect subtle bias patterns human reviewers might overlook. We're not just looking for obvious cases like Caroline Hayes, explains FTC Commissioner Lisa Thompson. We're identifying systemic patterns that create discriminatory outcomes, even when individual managers believe they're being fair. Congress passes the Retail Equality Act with overwhelming bipartisan support, establishing the strongest anti-discrimination protections in commercial history. The legislation creates federal whistleblower protections for employees who report racist behavior, mandatory bias training for all customer-facing personnel, and personal liability for executives who ignore discriminatory practices. Senator Amy Rodriguez, a key architect of the legislation, credits Marcus's courage for creating the political momentum needed for change. He showed America that discrimination isn't just morally wrong, it's economically destructive and fundamentally opposed to our values as a nation. Business schools across the country revise their curricula to include extensive diversity and inclusion training. The Hayes case becomes required reading in retail management courses, with students analyzing how institutional racism develops and spreads through corporate cultures. Dr. Michael Chen, who leads the new Center for Retail Ethics at Stanford Business School, explains the educational impact. Students see how quickly a respected establishment can become a national symbol of discrimination. They understand that preventing the next Caroline Hayes requires constant vigilance and institutional commitment. The National Retail Federation establishes the Wellington Hayes Institute for Retail Excellence, named both for Marcus's leadership and as a reminder of Hayes's failure. The institute provides ongoing training, research, and policy recommendations to prevent discriminatory practices across the industry. Anonymous reporting systems become standard across retail chains nationwide. Employees can now report discriminatory behavior through secure digital platforms that bypass local management and connect directly to corporate compliance departments and federal regulators. Customer advisory boards are established at major retailers, providing community oversight and feedback on service practices. These boards include civil rights leaders, community organizers, and customer advocates who monitor retail behavior and recommend policy improvements. The results are measurable and dramatic. Discrimination complaints drop 70% industry-wide within 2 years. Minority customer satisfaction increases significantly as retailers actively seek previously underserved demographics. Employee diversity improves across all levels of management as toxic workplace cultures are systematically eliminated. Marcus Wellington didn't just save his own store, observes retail industry analyst Patricia Davis. He saved the entire industry's relationship with minority communities. The changes implemented after the Hayes case have made retail more profitable, more ethical, and more sustainable. State retail commissions adopt similar reforms, creating a comprehensive regulatory framework that makes discrimination career-ending for individuals and financially devastating for companies. The days of ignored complaints and buried incidents are permanently over. The transformation extends beyond policy changes to fundamental cultural shifts. Retail executives now understand that discrimination isn't just illegal. It's a critical business risk that can destroy careers, companies, and shareholder value in the social media age. Technology companies develop new AI systems that monitor customer interactions for bias indicators. Training programs use virtual reality to help employees recognize and address their unconscious prejudices. Data analytics track inclusive service delivery across all customer demographics. 3 years later, Marcus had transformed an entire industry. 3 years after the incident that changed everything, Marcus Wellington stands before the gleaming glass doors of what was once Prestige Boutique, now transformed into Unity Fashion. The morning sun reflects off the store's modern facade, casting long shadows across the marble corridor where he once stood in shock and determination. The grand reopening ceremony draws hundreds of community members, retail industry leaders, and civil rights advocates. Children who witnessed the original incident through social media now see hope made manifest in designer clothing displays and inclusive customer service. This store represents more than fashion retail, Marcus tells the assembled crowd, his voice carrying the same calm authority that once faced down Caroline Hayes. It represents the principle that every person deserves dignity, respect, and equal treatment, regardless of their appearance, background, or circumstances. The new store employs 22 people, its diverse staff reflecting the community it serves. Jenny, the former sales associate who courageously documented Hayes' behavior, now serves as general manager. Her journey from silent witness to empowered leader exemplifies the transformation Marcus's actions made possible. Rodriguez, the security guard who recognized injustice but initially felt powerless to act, heads the customer experience department. His evolution teaches that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing justice despite that fear. 200 miles away, Caroline Hayes finishes her shift at a discount clothing warehouse where she works in inventory management. Prison changed her in ways she never anticipated. The mandatory counseling sessions, the diversity workshops, the long nights reflecting on her actions, all gradually dismantled the prejudices that once defined her worldview. She lives alone in a modest apartment, her family permanently estranged, her reputation irreparably damaged. The woman who once wielded power over customers now struggles to afford basic necessities. Yet for the first time in years, she sleeps peacefully, no longer carrying the weight of hatred in her heart. Hayes has written dozens of letters to Marcus, letters of apology, of recognition, of genuine remorse. None have been sent. She understands that some wounds run too deep for simple apologies. Some consequences extend far beyond personal forgiveness. At the store opening, Marcus reflects on the journey that brought him here. The humiliation that initially burned with rage has transformed into something more powerful, a commitment to systemic change that transcends individual vengeance. "I could have simply fired Caroline Hayes and moved on," he tells a reporter. But individual accountability without systemic change is just performance theater. Real progress requires transformation at every level, personal, corporate, and institutional. The statistics demonstrate that transformation. Retail discrimination complaints have plummeted 75% nationwide. Minority business ownership has reached historic highs. Customer satisfaction scores consistently break records across the industry. The culture of exclusion that once defined luxury retail has given way to one of inclusion and opportunity. Young retail professionals now study Marcus's response as a masterclass in ethical leadership. Business schools teach the Wellington Hayes case as an example of how individuals can drive institutional change through courage, preparation, and strategic thinking. A group of high school students attends the ceremony, their faces bright with possibility. They represent the generation that will inherit the changes Marcus fought to create, a generation that expects equality as a baseline, not a privilege to be earned. Success without purpose is meaningless, Marcus concludes his speech, his words echoing across the crowd. We all have the ability to create change, to stand up for what's right, to refuse to accept injustice as inevitable. The question isn't whether you have power, it's how you choose to use it. The ceremony ends with the ribbon falling to the ground, but the real work continues. Every transaction, every interaction, every moment of respectful service represents a small victory against the forces of discrimination and exclusion. Marcus Wellington transformed his moment of humiliation into a movement for justice. His legacy lies not in the punishment of one racist manager, but in the creation of systems that prevent future Caroline Hayes from causing such harm. The store thrives under new management, its success proving that doing the right thing isn't just morally correct, it's profitable, sustainable, and transformative for entire communities. The story was ending, but the revolution Marcus started would continue forever. The camera captures Marcus's smile as he cuts the ribbon, the fabric falling away to reveal Unity Fashion's gleaming interior. The applause that follows represents more than celebration. It's recognition that ordinary people can create extraordinary change when they refuse to accept discrimination as inevitable. Have you ever been treated unfairly because of how you look? Share your experience below. The comments section floods with responses from around the globe. A teacher in Detroit describes being followed around department stores despite her professional appearance. A tech executive in Silicon Valley shares his experience of being ignored by luxury car salespeople. A nurse in Miami details being questioned about her ability to afford basic purchases. Each story reinforces the universal nature of retail discrimination while highlighting the power of speaking truth to power. Marcus's example has inspired countless others to document injustice, demand accountability, and create change within their own communities. The ripple effects continue expanding across industries. Corporate boardrooms prioritize diversity not just as moral imperative, but as business necessity. The Hayes case appears in leadership training programs worldwide, demonstrating how quickly careers and companies can be destroyed by discriminatory behavior. Marcus Wellington didn't just transform one store, observes civil rights historian Dr. Patricia Williams. He showed America that individual courage can drive institutional change. His story proves that justice isn't just about punishment, it's about prevention. The Wellington Foundation, established with proceeds from Marcus's book royalties and speaking fees, provides legal support for discrimination victims who lack resources to fight back. The foundation has funded over 300 cases, creating a comprehensive network of protection for vulnerable consumers. Young professionals cite Marcus's example when confronting bias in their own careers. He showed us that dignity isn't negotiable, says Maria Santos, a recent business school graduate. You don't have to accept unfair treatment just because it's common. Should retail discrimination have criminal consequences? Drop your thoughts in the comments. The debate rages in comments, corporate conferences, and congressional hearings. Some advocate for harsher criminal penalties, while others support restorative justice approaches that emphasize education and rehabilitation over punishment. Unity Fashion becomes a pilgrimage site for retail managers studying inclusive practices. Business students analyze its transformation from symbol of discrimination to model of equality. The store's success proves that treating all customers with dignity isn't just morally right, it's economically smart. But as the sun sets on this particular story, another drama unfolds in corporate America. Somewhere, a brilliant young programmer faces dismissal by colleagues who can't see past her age. A veteran executive encounters assumptions about his capabilities based on his disability. A talented manager confronts barriers because of her sexual orientation. These stories await their champions, these injustices await their challengers, these systems await their transformers. Marcus Wellington's legacy isn't just about retail, it's about the ongoing struggle for equality in every workplace, every industry, every corner of society. This wasn't just about one racist manager, Marcus reflects in his final media interview. It was about creating a world where the next person who faces discrimination has the tools, the support, and the courage to fight back. The story ends, but the movement continues. Every viewer who refuses to stay silent, every employee who reports discrimination, every leader who prioritizes justice over comfort, they all carry Marcus's legacy forward. Every person who treats others with dignity regardless of appearance, every manager who chooses inclusion over exclusion, every customer who speaks up against injustice, they're all part of the revolution Marcus started. Remember, dignity is priceless, but discrimination costs everything.